In this video, I want to talk about how important it is to recopy the remaining parts of your ordering chain closer to the work that you're doing for an individual problem. It's a technique that I like to think of as cutting and pasting, and it is one of the keys to doing games based on ordering chains very quickly and accurately. So as you can see, I've already diagrammed all of the rules on the left here and put them together into one ordering chain. So let's get right into the issue. So let's say we're doing a problem that gives us the new condition if f is fourth. Here's what a lot of students will do. They'll start off, as they should, by drawing a new set of slots for this problem, and then they will write f in spot 4. Now at this point, they might realize that, well, because h and k and t have to go to the left of f, they'll realize that on the left side of f, you're going to have some combination of h before k and then a floating t somewhere there. At this point, they'll probably just go to the answers to figure out what could be true or what must be true depending on what the question asks. Now, there's nothing wrong with what this student just did, but they are not going to be able to see the relationships between H, K, and T, as well as between the other letters, the N, S, R, and G, as quickly as someone who just cuts and pastes the remaining part of the chain closer to the diagram. So here's what I mean. If we know that this H before K and this floating T to the left of F are going to have to go somewhere in slots 1, 2, and 3, it's not that difficult to just quickly recopy that closer to the diagram, and now you can see that this T gets to go in 1, 2, or 3, and the H is always going to go before K. So slot 1 is either going to have H or T, and slot 3 is either going to have T or K. And now let's go one step further and take a look at the other part of the ordering chain that's left, and let's just recopy that part closer to the diagram. That is going to have to go to the right of F. N is before S, and N is before R, which is before G. Do you notice that now that we've written it out close to the diagram, it's a lot easier to see that this N is now going to be forced into spot 5 because it has to go before the 3 remaining letters. So the N is now going to go in 5, and now one more step we can take is to actually just cross off this N because we've already put it down. Now do you see that this S gets to go anywhere in 6, 7, or 8, and you're going to have an R before G. That means slot 6 is either going to be R or S, because it can never be G, and slot 8 is either going to be G or S, because the R is never going to fit there. Notice how much more we know about each of these letters, and how much easier it is to see the possibilities when we draw the remaining parts of the chain close to the diagram than when we just left it like this. While you can still do the problem just by doing this, it's going to take you more time on average. Let's take a look at another example. In this question, let's say the condition is if n is fifth. So what I would do is I would recopy this set of slots just for this problem, and I would go ahead and write n in slot 5. But instead of just leaving it there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take note of what is after n, what must come after n. Do you see that we have an S that's going to float in 6, 7, or 8, and we also have an R before G. And you can, if you want, note this, that slot 6 is either going to be R or S, because the G is never going to be able to fit there, it needs room for the S, and slot 8 is either going to be the S or the G. But I wouldn't stop just there. I would then take a look at the other part of the chain that's remaining, this H, K, F, T part of the chain, and I will recopy that closer to the slots. And if you do that, it's a lot easier to see the next deduction. Do you notice that the F is now going to be forced to slot 4 because it has to go after the remaining letters? And if you just mentally cross this F off, or even on your paper just cross the F off, you'll notice that the T gets to go anywhere from slots 1 through 3, and you'll notice that the first slot is either going to be H or T, and the third slot is either going to be T or K. So this is the full work that I would do for this kind of question. Now again, as you get better and better at logic games, you won't necessarily need to write all of the little things that I wrote, but you'd be surprised at how much people who are good at logic games still continue to write. In fact, there's a misconception that when you get good at logic games, you no longer need to write things out, or that the people who are good at logic games are the people who can just see everything in their heads. But that gets it backwards. Actually, writing more things out is what makes people better at logic games. So let's take a look at one more example. Let's say in this problem we're told if h is in 1 and if f is in 5, then what could be true? So again, what a lot of students would do is they would recopy the set of slots, they would then put h in 1 and f in 5, and then they just leave it there. They just go to the answers. But the better approach is this. Do you notice that to the left of this f, we have to have the k, and we also have to have a t. So that tells us that in slots 2, 3, and 4, we're going to have a k somewhere there, and we're going to have a t somewhere there. We don't know the exact order, but they are limited to those 3 slots. Notice that the k is already going to be after the h, so we don't have to worry about the h before k. But let's not stop there. Let's also take a look at the rest of the chain here. This is n before r before g and n before s. And do you notice that we still have to put these letters down somewhere on our slots? I have 4 letters left that have to go in that order, n before s, and then n is before r and g, so the n is going to have to go before those 3 letters. I only have 3 slots remaining on the right of f. And so if I only have 3 slots remaining on the right of f, that means that this n is never going to be able to fit to the right of f. That means this n is now forced to go to the left of f, and because the n has no relationship to the k or the t, it gets to trade off with any of them. That means this n is going to be added to those letters that are going to go in 2, 3, and 4. K, n, and t are going to be in some order in 2, 3, and 4. And that means in the remaining slots here, let's go ahead and get rid of that n. In the remaining slots here, we have an s that gets to go anywhere from 6, 7, or 8. And slot 6 is going to be either s or r. And slot 8 is either going to be g or s. Notice that by recopying the remaining parts of the ordering chain closer to our diagram, it's a lot easier to see that K, N, and T are going to be trading off to the left of the F here, and that these 3 letters are going to be going to the right of the F, where you have to put the R before the G.